It is time for our featured review, and for that, we are going to a 2023 movie. We're still really focused on that, trying to get ready for our best movies of the year, our top 10 next week, getting through as much as we can. And there was a brand new one on Netflix this weekend that I don't know got a decent amount of buzz through the festival run, and we're going to talk about it now. It is called Society of the Snow, based on a true story. Todd, you're going to start us out on this one. Tell us all about Society of the Snow and what you thought.
Okay, it is directed by J.A. Bayona, and it is the true story of the 1972 Uruguayan rugby team and others who are on this ill-fated plane trip from like in the Andes Mountains headed to Chile, and it gets into a storm. It kind of clips part of the mountain, and the whole plane broke apart and goes hurling down into like this remote part of the mountains, and very few people survived, and which was actually kind of the easy part because nobody really knew that they were there. It's kind of ridiculous to think that anybody would actually survive that. And their conditions are horrible. And there's like little to no rations or comfort or anything. And the movie portrays exclusively the fight for survival from these group of people. And it's done with like a lot of like realism and really kind of gritty. The cinematography is stunning. The sound work is like painfully good, and it kind of reminded me of Peter Weir's The Way Back, just like in the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of weather. But it's a really cool setup. You get like briefly introduced to these characters, and then it goes like straight into the action. The crash sequence is just breathtaking to watch. It should immediately vault the movie into like the visual effects and sound and editing and makeup categories at the Oscars. It kind of reminded me of when I watched like Hereafter or something. I was like, well, that is one effect that could literally take it to the Oscars in several categories. The movie's pretty captivating to watch. There isn't really a lot to review. It's kind of like The Revenant in that way, where this is just like a really good survival movie and like an upper tier survival movie. It's kind of brutal. It's kind of fascinating. This one's a little bit more inspirational, and it's certainly more involving and more mature than the 1993 version of the story called Alive. I think Ethan Hawke was in that. It's just one of the like an experience you got to have. Like it kind of reminded me like last year we had All Quiet on the Western Front came from Netflix like late in the year, and it plays just as well at home as it would in the theater. But it kind of seems like it was made for the theater, but it really doesn't matter because it's still really cool to watch. The score is really memorable. It's got a strong message about faith and resilience and kind of brotherhood. J.A. Bayona is an interesting director. He rarely gets a chance to show how good he is. Like The Orphanage is probably his best movie. Then he had like The Impossible, which was kind of his audition for this movie. Probably like it was a big Oscar movie. A Monster Calls showed what he could do with his visual range. Here it all comes together. This is a great movie. 3.5 stars.
All right. Zach, you're next.
Well, God bless this movie. And here in the Midwest, when you say God bless, it really just means like F you. But God bless this movie. I'm going 2.5 stars. I have to give it thumbs down. I think the movie is earnest. I think it's about something important. I think for what it's worth, I guess it's well made. It's so long. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And another problem I have with it is, again, God bless these soccer players for doing, or rugby players for doing unimaginable things and having the courage to survive and yada, yada, yada. But like, I don't know any of these people. It is really hard to follow who each of the people are, who each of the survivors are. And the movie does have a narrator, but you don't really find out anything about that narrator. His narration is very depressing and sad and very flat tones that he's speaking. And then it's contrasted with images of all the people, stranded. And I mean, to me, I wish the movie had taken a more visual risks. I think that this movie is very clearly ripping off everything that Chivo did in The Revenant. And I guess to a lesser extent, Werner Herzog, since I think that Chivo was kind of ripping off Werner Herzog. And I don't know. It just it feels kind of like static for a while. The plane crash is pretty cool and interesting. It has a lot of CGI. There's a lot of bone crunching that reminds you that this director made When a Monster Calls. But once they actually crash land, the movie has, the next 90 minutes is pretty visually uninteresting. I mean, there's a few like wide kind of drone shots. There's a part where they get avalanched in, and so it's all very tight, like the bride getting buried alive. Also, for like, again, this was also my criticism of the Sydney Sweeney movie. For like an R-rated movie, like this movie was pretty tame. You know, obviously there's allusions to cannibalism in the movie, but it's like the movie has this sort of weird chaste attitude toward it, that it doesn't want to show anything. Like Alive was a lot more, you know, you saw a lot more gruesome shit in that movie. And maybe that's what enhanced the drama of it. I don't think Alive is a great movie necessarily either. And yeah, you can't help but watch this movie and compare it to All Quiet on the Western Front, which was a quad-approved movie. It was on several of our top 10 lists last year. But I think what that movie had going for it is like a real sense of who that character was, the main character. You follow that character. This character, again, he feels more like an eyewitness than a true protagonist or hero. And that movie also just had a lot more visual flair and a lot more like visually interesting things going on. Again, this movie just feels really redundant. Maybe if it had been 30 minutes shorter, I would have reacted to it better. But I'm giving it a 2.5 stars. A noble movie, handsomely mounted, as they say in the industry, but left me cold, no pun intended. You can put that on the poster right there.
Left me cold, no pun intended. Well done. Well done. All right. So I agree 100% with Todd. I was completely taken in by this movie. I thought, again, like you said, it was visually stunning. I don't know what Zach's talking about. Even the in-between, I think there's so many interesting things that it does visually. The avalanche was interesting. It's got some really interesting shots of the characters with the backdrop. I mean, it's an amazing movie. That crash sequence, yeah, like Todd said, it's like one scene that makes the movie. Like when you see that scene, like that's the movie right there. It is long, but at no point during it did I feel like it was dragging. Like I was totally buying into everything that it was given to me, and I loved it. I loved it. I'm giving it 3.5 stars. I'm considering 4 stars. I thought this movie was absolutely outstanding. Now, the worst part of this movie is the fact that the default setting on Netflix is that you watch it dubbed. That is the worst part of the movie. So it started, and you start hearing that opening narration for the first couple minutes in English, and I was like, oh, I thought this movie was going to be in Spanish, but okay, I guess it is in English. And then you start to see the characters. I'm like, this movie's not supposed to be in English. And luckily this one, you can turn on the original, unlike, you know, like when RRR was on Netflix, where you had to watch it dubbed. They would not allow you on Netflix to watch the original language they were speaking. This one, you at least could change it. So we quickly changed it to the actual language. But yeah, 3.5 stars. Blown away by it. It was really, really cool. And I like what Todd said too, in that, yeah, it would have been great in theaters, but it works just as well at home too. And at no point did I look at the clock and be like, how much longer have we got in this? It was, I was too engaged with what was going on.
And the runtime is deceiving because there are 16 minutes of credits. So
exactly, it's a Netflix movie, so you always have to remember that with the runtime, because they always have way too many credits.
Yeah, I think most people would agree with your guys' review. I'm not saying and I would imagine that a theatrical viewing experience would have helped my review of the movie. I did check the watch. I was like, you know, oh God, we're only 3 days into this, and we're at the 45-minute mark. Like we got a lot of time left. I think part of the problem for me was that, like, I feel like that story's been told a lot. It was a movie before. It's a book. It's Yellow Jackets. It's like everything. And, you know, it's got the Apollo 13 syndrome a little bit. You know the ending. So where are you going to find the drama in it? Well, this director doesn't really want to make the drama about the moral quandary of cannibalism. I mean, there's a few like kind of shorthanded conversations about it that I actually thought were the most interesting part of the movie, like the ethics of, you know, eating someone, and then when they volunteer themselves to be eaten in the case of their death. That was like kind of a cool scene. That was, to me, was far more interesting than any of the wide shots or the wide angle mountain shots. And I wish the movie had more of that. I wish maybe it had been, but I think that the bottom line is I was just grasping for more character. you're really telling me that you remembered all those people? You remember, Chico, and you remember Ron, and you remember like Pedro and everybody? Like, it was absolutely baffling to me who each of these people were. And when they eventually died, I didn't really feel a lot for them, except, I mean, yes, it's a tragedy, but like, I think we just needed more either backstory or more clarity about who's who.
I mean, you do have a point that it's kind of hard to tell who's who, and you don't really get to know them all that well. I'm sure on rewatch you'd understand it a little more because you're a little more used to it. But that's any ensemble movie where they're not recognizable actors.
Well,
So
I don't think so.
if you did know who they were, you would have added another 20 minutes onto the runtime that Zachary didn't like, because like you would need those establishing scenes, which this one doesn't have. It just has like one scene of them playing rugby, and then we're pretty much on the flight, which I liked. I was like, oh wow, we're getting into this.
And I did not
Yeah,
know
but
the story. I know nothing about the story going into it. So
And this is
Yeah,
a
I
brand
mean, I
new
get
book, I believe, right? So it's not like this exact way of telling it has been told before.
Yeah, I get your point, Todd. I'm not asking for A, recognizable Hollywood actors, or B, a more prolonged prologue to the movie. I think maybe what I would have preferred was, and I think maybe the problem was every time they listed someone who died, it felt like, oh shit, I should have known that character, but maybe I didn't. I don't know. And even again, the main character, I just kind of felt like, who is this person a little bit? I don't know. I'm nitpicking. I think on a big screen, it would have made a more powerful impact. But I don't know. Just cut out 30 minutes of it. It just didn't need to be that long.
agree to disagree.
Yeah. And once
All
again,
right.
I think Zach just needs a new TV if he didn't think this looked really good.
Are you kidding? I probably have the best TV out of the three of you. I got this like really nice 65-inch Vizio. I love it. And I got the surround sound. If this movie can't impress me on that, then I mean, it is kind of, I'd love to see it in a theater, but the pandemic taught us that if you don't have a big TV, you're screwed.
It's a fair point.
That's
All
the one
right.
thing.
Well, 3.5 from me, 3.5 from Todd, 2.5 from Zach. It is on Netflix. Make sure you turn it on the Spanish language with the English subtitles like it was meant to be.